You walk into a grocery store, and there is this very specific comfort in the mundane.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. Like the fluorescent lights buzz above you, the aisles are neatly arranged by category, the freezer section at the back just hums with this steady, predictable rhythm.
Yeah, it's a space that's engineered entirely for predictability.
Exactly. You rely entirely on the assumption that this system makes perfect sense. It's an environment built to be safe, controlled, and, just entirely ordinary.
Because everything has a barcode, a clear price tag, a designated place on a shelf.
Right.
And the human brain loves that kind of structured environment. It requires zero cognitive load to navigate. I mean, you don't have to scan for threats in the dairy aisle.
No, you really don't.
Yeah.
But what happens when that predictability is just a veneer?
That is the terrifying question.
Right. Like when the system completely breaks down and you, the listener, are left staring at something that defies every logical rule you've ever known.
Yeah, it's unsettling.
To say the least. So today's deep dive takes us straight into the heart of that terrifying breakdown. We're looking at a set of excerpts from a recently surfaced, highly classified document. It's titled The Hunger in the Ice.
Such an ominous title.
It really is. And our mission today is to sift through the evidence of this, frankly, impossible event that took place at an abandoned supermarket called Merrow's Market.
Right, we're going to reconstruct the timeline, analyze the physics.
And really just try to understand how a totally mundane grocery store freezer became the epicenter of a 20-year-long mystery.
It is a case study that really forces a complete reevaluation of the spaces we pass through every single day.
Oh, for sure.
And what makes this document so disturbing, isn't just the anomaly itself. It's the sheer volume of warning signs that were actively ignored by everyone involved before the containment finally breached.
Yeah, the denial is wild. So let's set the scene for everyone. Merrow's Market has been abandoned for about 8 months. A fire damaged the front of the building. The store went bankrupt and it was shuttered. So now the aisles are rotting. The ceilings are leaking warm rainwater.
Mold everywhere.
Exactly, mold spreading through the drywall. But in the pitch-black rear of the store, the heavy steel doors of the industrial meat locker are still humming.
Which is so creepy.
Totally. They're running on an emergency backup power grid.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the very first anomalies reported in this document didn't start with a visual.
No, they didn't.
They started with a sound. It was logged by the night security guards, who were tasked with just watching the perimeter.
Right.
Every single night, at exactly 12:47 a.m., 3 loud metallic knocks echoed through this empty, rotting store.
And the pattern is key here.
Yes. 1 knock from outside the freezer door, 2 knocks from inside.
The initial logs from those night guards are honestly a fascinating study in the psychology of denial.
Oh, they really are.
They document the sounds, but they immediately offer these rationalizations right in the margins.
Well, they blame shifting pipes. They theorize that the metal of the freezer is expanding and contracting due to the temperature differential.
Which is wild, because 1 knock outside and 2 knocks inside isn't a temperature differential. That is a clear mathematical call and response.
Exactly. It's deliberate.
Right. But I have to point out the even bigger logical fallacy here, which is the management's official reason for keeping the freezer powered in the first place.
Oh, the inventory excuse.
Yes. The document notes that management claimed they were running it on backup power to, quote, prevent spoiled inventory from rotting further.
Which makes no sense.
Zero economic or practical sense. The store is closed indefinitely. The meat is already ruined by an 8-month power grid failure.
Right, it's already gone bad.
So why spend thousands of dollars fueling a backup generator just to keep already ruined meat slightly less ruined?
Well, they were constructing a bureaucratic narrative.
You think?
Oh, definitely. They were doing it to avoid confronting a pattern that threatened their reality. Management, the guards, they were all experiencing massive ontological shock.
Ontological shock, yeah.
Because if you acknowledge that something intelligent is knocking from inside a sealed, abandoned freezer...
You actually have to deal with it.
Exactly. But if you just blame the pipes, well, you can finish your shift and go home.
It's honestly like driving a car down the highway.
Right.
And the check engine light starts flashing red, the hood starts smoking, and instead of pulling over...
You just crank up the radio volume.
Yes. People will rationalize the most terrifying warning signs because the alternative is just too paradigm-shattering to face.
And we know from the document that there were precursors to this.
Oh, yeah. Months before the fire, overnight cleanup workers reported hearing overlapping whispering. And it was coming from behind the freezer walls.
So freaky.
Entire crews of blue-collar workers literally walked off the job and forfeited their paychecks rather than go near that meat locker.
They knew something was wrong.
And then, there's the disappearance of the assistant manager, Greg Palmer. This was 6 months prior.
Palmer's case is the glaring red flag the authorities just chose to completely ignore.
Totally.
The police file included in the excerpts shows Palmer walking into that freezer on security footage at 12:46 a.m.
Just a minute before the knocks usually start.
Exactly. And the camera never captures him exiting.
Never.
But the official police conclusion. They just assumed he found a blind spot, stole some petty cash, and fled the state.
They turned up the radio again.
Yep.
Because acknowledging a man literally vanished into a sealed metal box is impossible.
Right.
But that desperate self-delusion could only hold for so long. It all unravels on a rainy Thursday night when the anomalies escalate to a point where the veneer just shatters.
The 911 call.
Yes, a panicked 911 call brings Officer Lena Ortiz to Merrow's Market.
And when Officer Ortiz arrives, the physical environment itself is already signaling a localized breakdown of natural law. Well, she finds the security guard huddled near the front checkout lanes, and he's in a state of severe shock. He's just repeating, he's still in there, the freezer open by itself.
Oh, man. So Ortiz draws her weapon.
Yeah.
Right, and she moves down the dark, moldy main aisle toward the back hallway.
Yeah.
And as she gets closer, she hears 3 massive bangs. Not knocks this time.
No.
Boom, boom, boom. Literally shaking the floorboards.
It's aggressive now.
Very. But looking at her incident report, the clash in the physical environment is what really stands out to me.
The frost.
Yeah. It's a warm, highly humid summer night. It's literally raining outside. Yet, as she enters that back hallway, she knows the thick, white frost is actively coating the nearby metal shelves of the linoleum floor.
Which is physically impossible.
Exactly. So looking at the thermodynamics of this, how is that even possible? A commercial freezer is designed to insulate. It traps cold air inside.
Right.
So how does a freezer project its cold outward so violently that it alters the climate of a humid, unsealed room?
It shouldn't be possible under standard mechanical refrigeration.
That's what I thought.
For frost to accumulate on ambient shelving in a warm, humid environment, the temperature gradient has to be impossibly steep.
Okay.
What Ortiz is documenting here isn't a mechanical malfunction, it's an entropy sink.
An entropy sink.
Yeah, whatever is inside that room is absorbing ambient thermal energy at a massive scale and projecting extreme cold outward.
Wow.
The freezer is no longer functioning as an insulated box. It has essentially become a permeable membrane for a massive thermodynamic anomaly.
That makes the visual of the freezer door even more horrifying, honestly.
Oh, the handprints.
Yes. Ortiz's flashlight hits the heavy steel doors of the meat locker, and she documents dozens of human handprints frozen into the exterior metal walls surrounding the frame.
But not how you'd think.
Right, because looking closely, she realizes the prints aren't on the outside pressing in.
No.
They are trapped beneath layers of thick, unnatural ice pressing outward from the inside.
Which is terrifying.
It reminds me of a ruptured submarine hull, where the pressure inside the vessel becomes so immensely concentrated that it visibly warps the structural integrity of the steel outward.
The submarine parallel works perfectly to explain the physics of the barrier breaking down here.
Yeah.
The pressure inside that freezer, both thermodynamic and physical, is attempting to breach the containment.
Right.
And Ortiz notes a distinct sensory assault in the hallway, too.
What does she smell?
Well, she hears the hissing of the hydraulic door seals failing, but there's also the overwhelming smell of rotting meat, old blood, and this sharp, sour undertone.
Oh.
She isn't walking up to a crime scene anymore. She's approaching an active, predatory environment.
And those handprints pressing out from the steel, those are a desperate warning for her not to open it.
Because she's a cop.
But she has to clear the room. So she grabs the heavy handle, the steel is burning cold against her tactile gloves, and she pulls the door open.
And the architecture of what she finds inside.
It completely shatters her understanding of reality. Here's where it gets really interesting, because the biological rules go completely out the window.
Yeah, at first glance, her flashlight beam reveals what looks like an empty room.
Right.
Rusted shelves, empty meat hooks. But the dimensions of the room are wrong. The walls are far too thick. They're bulging outward irregularly with these massive opaque shapes of ice.
And the ceiling.
Oh, God, the ceiling.
The report notes that when the officers shine their lights upward, the entire ceiling is covered in thousands of bloody finger smears frozen into the frost.
Like they were clawing.
Literally clawing upward, as if whatever was in there was trying to escape gravity.
Yeah.
So Ortiz uses the heavy handle of her flashlight to chip away at one of the bulging anomalies in the wall.
A terrible idea in hindsight.
Seriously, a chunk of thick ice falls away and a human face stares back at her.
Wow.
A man, buried alive inside solid ice, eyes wide open, mouth stretched in a silent scream.
And as the other officers sweep their lights across the walls, the true scale of the horror is revealed.
It isn't just one person, is it?
No, there are hundreds of bodies packed into the ice, forming the walls of the freezer. Men, women, children.
Unbelievable.
But the state of these bodies defies basic biological preservation.
How so?
Ortiz notes seeing fully degraded skeletal remains fused into the ice right next to disturbingly fresh corpses.
Which raises a massive biological question.
Right.
I mean, if I take a piece of meat and put it into deep freeze, the water inside the cells expands, the cell walls rupture, and the tissue is destroyed.
Exactly. Cell death.
If these hundreds of people are frozen solid in ice, they should be dead, brittle matter. But Ortiz reports the impossible. As she's staring at the fresh corpse in the wall, the man's frozen eye twitches.
That is just chilling. And this happens the exact moment their police radios die in a burst of static.
Oh, right.
And the heavy steel door slams shut on its own, sealing them inside.
But biologically, how does an eye twitch in solid ice?
Yeah.
I mean, how do skeletons and fresh bodies coexist in the exact same frozen medium?
It doesn't make sense.
It's not a cryogenic preservation. It's this grotesque, corrupted biological suspension. It's as if time and cell death have just been paused.
Well, we have to consider what kind of mechanism allows for that.
Okay, what are you thinking?
To prevent cellular rupture in a deep freeze, certain organisms produce anti-freeze proteins.
Right.
What Ortiz is looking at suggests that whatever is controlling the space has flooded these victims with a compound, like perhaps a neurotoxin.
A neurotoxin.
Yeah, something that alters the freezing point of human tissue. It keeps their neurological functions firing while their physical bodies are structurally entombed.
Which means they are fully conscious.
Yes, they are locked in a torturous stasis.
Oh my God.
Because this isn't a mass grave. If we look at the structural layout, this is a living architecture.
The room hums with the backup generator.
But beneath that mechanical noise, Ortiz hears voices. Hundreds of whispers vibrating through the ice itself.
Saying what?
Things like, "Let us out, please, it's cold."
And then the walls begin to hammer. Dozens of fists striking from within the solid ice.
The walls of the freezer are visibly trembling at this point.
Because the victims aren't just trapped.
No, they're part of a biological circuit.
It's a circuit.
They're being actively utilized, likely slowly digested or used as a thermal battery by something that requires them to remain conscious and suffering to produce energy.
And then the physical barrier fails completely. Pale blue hands burst out of the frozen walls.
Oh, this part of the report is awful.
The report details the horrific sound of snapping bone as these frozen humans literally break their own arms just to reach out and grab an officer's wrist tightly.
They're desperate.
One of the officers panics and fires his sidearm into the wall. The bullet shatters a massive sheet of frost, and it reveals hundreds of faces packed tightly together behind the ice.
All watching them.
Hundreds of eyes, all opening simultaneously, all watching the cops. And one victim emerges halfway from the wall, screaming through blackened, frostbitten lips, "Don't let it freeze you."
The chaos of that moment in the report is just palpable.
I can't even imagine.
But amidst the panic, there is a glaring logistical problem here.
Which is?
Where did hundreds of people come from in a quiet suburban grocery store without triggering a massive federal investigation?
That's a great point.
I mean, you don't just disappear an entire crowd of people unnoticed.
No, you don't. And the answer to that plays out on the old CRT security monitors mounted near the ceiling.
The video feed.
Yes. The temperature in the freezer drops violently.
Mm.
Ortiz actually notes her own breath crystallizing instantly in the air.
Right.
And the dead monitors suddenly flicker to life through heavy static. But they aren't showing a camera feed of the freezer room.
What are they showing?
They are showing live, real-time footage of the supermarket's front entrance.
Ah.
And the footage shows dozens of ordinary people. Families holding hands, shoppers with umbrellas, employees.
Just normal people.
Walking calmly in from the summer rain outside. They walk down the main aisle, past the rotting shelves, and head straight for the back hallway.
Straight toward the freezer.
Exactly. And Officer Ortiz recognizes the faces on the monitor. This is where the puzzle pieces lock together in the most horrifying way.
Because they aren't random shoppers.
No. These aren't random people walking in off the street tonight. These are faces from cold case missing persons files spanning nearly 2 decades.
It's 20 years of victims.
Every single person who ever vanished within a 50-mile radius of Merrow's Market. The footage is this impossible loop, showing them entering the freezer over the span of 20 years.
And none of them ever exiting.
Never.
They were drawn in. The entity didn't hunt them in the streets, it lured them.
Exactly, because then, on the monitor, Greg Palmer appears.
Missing assistant manager.
Yes. He's alive, but his skin is a pale, necrotic gray. Thick ice crystals coat his eyelashes.
And he's holding something, right?
He's casually carrying a cardboard box of meat. He walks right up to the camera lens, smiles faintly, and whispers, "We're still hungry."
Ugh.
Reading this part of the document, the only thing I could think of was the deep-sea anglerfish.
Oh, that is a perfect analogy. If we look at deep-sea predators, the anglerfish relies entirely on the prey's false sense of security.
Exact.
It lives in total, crushing darkness at the bottom of the ocean. It doesn't chase its food. It dangles a small, glowing, bioluminescent lure in front of its massive, invisible jaws.
And the prey just comes to it.
The prey sees the light, thinks it's safe or interesting, and swims right into the trap.
Yes. This entity used a completely mundane, predictable suburban grocery store as its glowing lure.
It camouflaged itself as a point of modern convenience.
It quietly siphoned people out of normal society for 2 decades, targeting those who were isolated or shopping late at night.
And it used Greg Palmer, a trusted figure in a uniform, as the final bait to draw them into the jaws.
It forces a massive paradigm shift for Officer Ortiz in that room. The realization hits her that the freezer was never designed to keep the grocery inventory cold.
Not at all.
If you look at the architecture, the heavy steel vault doors, the reinforced walls, the dedicated emergency backup generator.
It was built to contain what was behind the ice.
Exactly. The humans weren't tragic victims of an industrial accident. They were a stockpiled food supply.
And the jaws of the anglerfish finally close.
They really do. Because right after Palmer whispers that they're hungry, the monitors shatter.
The trap is sprung.
The walls of the freezer absolutely explode with hundreds of grabbing hands. And deeper within the ice, behind the layers of trapped bodies, Ortiz sees it.
The entity.
A massive shape-shifting in the deep freeze. A physical mass larger than the room itself should logically hold.
Defying physics again.
Right. It's dripping thick black liquid that melts through the frost. And the entity speaks.
And it's not a human voice.
No. It's a deep, wet reverberation that vibrates in the officers' chests. Just one word. Stay.
Facing an ancient apex predator that has just revealed its trap, the officers are no longer investigators.
They are prey.
They realize they have mere seconds to break the containment before the thermodynamic anomaly freezes their nervous systems and they become permanent batteries in that wall.
So it's pure adrenaline. The cops panic, throwing their bodies against the heavy steel door, ramming it over and over, while the frozen hands are violently tearing at their uniforms from every side.
Just absolute chaos.
Finally, the latch gives. The steel door bursts open. The warm, humid summer air from the hallway aggressively floods into the freezing locker.
Which saves them.
Yes, the immediate temperature change causes the hands to retreat. They're screaming in agony as the ice begins to melt.
Wow.
Ortiz and the surviving officers spill out onto the supermarket linoleum, gasping for air, scrambling backward, and as they lay there in the dark,
The
heavy freezer door slowly swings shut by itself. The hydraulic seal clicks, followed by the familiar sounds. Boom, boom.
They escape the physical space, but the aftermath of this event introduces a completely different kind of horror.
It really does.
The horror of institutional denial.
Right. So what does this all mean? How does the world react to undeniable proof of a biological and thermodynamic impossibility?
They cover it up.
Exactly. The very next morning, city authorities permanently weld the doors of Merrow's Market shut. Concrete barriers are placed around the parking lot.
And the official police report.
Oh, the report signed by the chief. It blames the entire incident, the physical hands, the voices, the massive entity on, quote, mass hysteria and hallucinations caused by prolonged exposure to leaking refrigerant gas.
Which is a textbook mechanism of a systemic cover-up.
A gas leak. Seriously.
Yeah, you have multiple highly trained officers who suffer severe psychological trauma, several of whom immediately resign and never return to law enforcement.
Right.
You have physical evidence left behind in the store, but the institution chooses blindness.
The cognitive dissonance required by the police department here is staggering
It really is.
because the leaked document mentions what is sitting in the sealed police evidence locker right now.
The hard drive.
Yes. They recovered a corrupted hard drive from the store's security mainframe. The footage is damaged, but it plays one repeating, looping frame.
And what does it show?
Hundreds of people standing in the pitch black behind the walls of the freezer, moving slightly, still conscious, still waiting in the cold.
You cannot hallucinate a digital video file.
You cannot. The authorities locked the doors, sealed away physical evidence of an apex predator, and stamped gas leak on the file just to maintain the illusion of a safe world.
And why do they do that?
Why?
Because it is infinitely easier for society to write off 20 years of missing persons as a string of disconnected, mundane tragedies.
Yeah.
It's easier to label traumatized police officers as victims of a chemical leak than to admit the terrifying truth.
Which is?
To admit that ancient, hungry things exist in the exact spaces where we buy our milk and bread, where we take our children on a Tuesday evening.
That is horrifying.
It forces a profound reflection on how incredibly fragile our perception of daily safety truly is.
It fundamentally changes the way you, the listener, might look at your environment going forward.
Oh, absolutely.
Like when you walk past an abandoned strip mall in your town, or an old convenience store with flickering lights.
Or when you hear the deep, rhythmic humming of an industrial freezer in the back of a brightly lit supermarket.
You rely entirely on the assumption that the mundane world is exactly what it appears to be, that the system is predictable.
But it's not.
No, it's not. But there's one final lingering thread from the hunger in the ice that I want you to mull over today.
The containment protocol.
Exactly. The entire containment of this massive thermodynamic entity at Merrow's Market relies on one single point of failure.
The grid.
The building's emergency backup power grid. The heavy steel doors. The extreme cold required to keep the entity asleep and contained. It's all tied to a diesel generator humming in the dark.
And the market is abandoned.
Right. The electrical grid for that block is forgotten. So what happens to the rest of the town on the day that backup generator finally runs out of fuel?